Welcome to Wrestling and. Today we are talking about wrestling and tag teams. Tag team wrestling has had a renaissance in the last decade because of teams like DIY, the Young Bucks, Red Dragon, FTR, the Lucha Brothers, the Usos, and many more that we're going to talk about. But great tag team matches aren't new. In fact, at certain times in wrestling history, tag team wrestling has been a focal part of certain promotions and programs. So, how did tag team wrestling start, and where do we see it going into the future? Just like most of the stuff we talk about, the history of it and where it's going. Well, I will answer those questions along with the king of the in-ring art empire, Mr. In-Ring Art, Justin. Justin, how are you doing?
Calling it an empire is a very generous thing to say. Far from it.
Well, there's so much art that you have, like it's a big number. It's an empire of artwork.
Kind of slowed it down a little bit lately, and I'm kind of trying to expand to TikTok and do certain things to kind of, just do some different angles with it for fun and whatever. But, hey, tag teams, great topic. And also, let's not forget, tag teams, a lot of, wrestlers that became individual superstars and legends, some of them started as tag team wrestlers, right?
There's that whole spectrum.
Yeah.
There's that whole spectrum, from people who started as a tag team, or even, like the Mega Powers, or were they superpowers or the Mega Powers of two huge stars becoming
form a tag team, join forces against, evil.
But, and not the wrestler. So, before we go into all that tag team stuff, have you been watching the G1? Because I've missed the last few nights.
I left off on... I'm in the middle of the Jay White Great-O-Khan match from the 6th, I believe. And
okay, so you haven't seen the
I haven't seen the rest of the
Shingo
matches.
Match?
No, not yet. And I missed... sometimes I just fall behind, and I missed the David Finlay Ospreay match from the other night.
Dude, we both need to catch up at least on those ones because I've missed it as well.
I watched every match leading up to it. I watched everything from the 5th. So I think the only match that I've missed is that Ospreay, and then whatever I haven't watched from the 6th.
Did you see Zack versus Tanahashi?
Yes.
Was that a good one?
Yeah, it was really good. I've enjoyed... I've enjoyed it overall. I know some people aren't as high on it, but I've thought it's been a pretty good tournament. There's been some lame stuff. There's been a few disappointments in my mind. I thought
it's been fun, though, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
those matches.
There's something I've just been a little disappointed with Juice Robinson in general in the tournament, especially with all the stuff all the talk and all the great promos leading up to it.
What do you think about Tom Lawler so far?
He's great. He's been, I was going to text you too. His commentary has been fantastic.
Was he doing commentary on
yes.
shows? Or?
Kevin's been using him and Lance Archer on random shows that are outside of the Tokyo area where Chris Charlton can't do it. And Tom Lawler has been very, very good.
Did you see
Archer's
his
been okay.
promo where he cried?
Yes. And did you see the Yano match? It was great.
I didn't see the Yano. Wait.
He tried
I didn't. I heard he tried to wrestle him legitimately and then
at the
started doing his tactics.
At the beginning, he offered, he wanted Yano's DVD, so he offered him a copy of Sister Act 1 and Sister Act 2 on DVD. On DVD.
Which I guess was popular in Japan, too.
Was it? I have to ask my wife that.
Weirdly enough. But that is a fucking hilarious reference.
And then he was wearing a wig, which I didn't even notice. And Yano was wearing 2 pairs of tights. Yano's stuff has been a little bit better than usual. The last couple of matches, the Lance Archer one, which I just saw, was pretty good too.
Well, he's got a formula, but sometimes when he kind of defies your expectations and breaks the formula a little bit, that's where I like Yano.
His shtick works if he does little things that are different. Like the Omega match is really good when they were jumping tied together. That was good. The Moxley match,
hair shots.
The Moxley match when he tied him to Shota Umino on the outside was great. And the Lance Archer had, if you haven't seen yet, had some similar spots, but they did actually make some things unique about it. And the stuff with Tom Lawler was really good, and Tom Lawler had a wig on. So he pulled his hair, and it was in it. Yeah.
It popped right off.
Yeah, and Jonah's. You're talking about just overall. Jonah's been great in the tournament too. He looks great in that. Bad Dude Tito's looked great in the undercard, even though I haven't watched too much of it.
Jonah did Jonah beat what's his name, dude? Why can't I remember?
Jeff Cobb.
Jeff Cobb.
Yeah. Man, that was a great match, and the most impressive thing was this suplex. If I had to look at it again, the 2-hour 35-minute mark. I know we're going on. We're going to talk about tag teams in a minute. I promise. He did this.
No, it's
suplex.
cool. We're going to spend some time talking about other stuff first, and then we'll get to it.
He did this overhead release suplex-ish kind of fall-away slam. Jeff Cobb lifted Jonah up and did like a suplex, kind of overhead slam on Jonah. It was incredible, and that match was awesome.
Well, I mean, he did give Fale the tour of the islands. I mean, this dude can pretty much do anything with everyone. They always say you should always have a special move, a finisher that you can do to everyone, right? Yeah. And it's like,
Jeff Cobb does.
He does, even though most people wouldn't be able to do his finish to everyone. But it's like one of those things. If you can make it in New York, or you can make it anywhere. If you can do it to Fale, you can probably do it to anybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing that replay. I'm gonna have to jump in there and check that out. While we're in Japan, did you hear anything at all about the Dragon Gate tag team match?
No. It's not usually in my peripherals, so no.
Yeah, they had a really great match. Jason Lee and Jackie Funky Kame. I know you don't know these guys. Diamante, but you've heard maybe Shun Skywalker.
Yeah, I've heard him in the past. Yeah. I've heard the name.
Shun Skywalker, and it was the match of the week for the Wrestling Observer, and a lot of people talked about it as really great. I thought it was pretty damn good. It's tough, though. When everyone tells you this match is 5 stars, this match is 5 stars, you're like, oh, fuck.
You're automatically a little jaded on it, yeah.
Well, and I wasn't even jaded. I was ready for it. Like, oh, hell yeah. I'm so ready. But after I saw it, I was like, okay, well, this was a very, very good match. But it didn't, take it to that next level for me. But I think part of the story has to do with this kid, Jackie Funky Kame. Dude's 5'3", tiny guy, maybe a little taller than that. He's tiny though, but I mean, I'm gonna have to send you some clips. This guy can really go.
For some reason, a lot of Dragon Gate stuff doesn't make it into my feed on places. I think I need to start following some stuff attached to Dragon Gate. I see Noah stuff here and there for whatever stuff I follow, but I don't get a lot of Dragon Gate presented to me.
I want to say Dragon Gate, in my opinion, is generally better than Noah, but that's because, there's more ridiculous, even to where that kind of influenced PWG style stuff. They're multi-man tags, which we'll get to. They're just absolutely ridiculous. But that tag team match was great, and this guy, Jackie Funky Kame, young guy, it's almost like a Rey Mysterio type of presence where incredible acrobatics and movement and strikes. And their gimmick, too, is that they're both Chinese martial artists. Kind of like Watto, but way, way, way better than Master Watto. The strikes look crisp, and the you have your crazy aerial sequences where dudes are throwing each other around. So I'll send you some clips of that match later on, and maybe get your opinion.
I mean,
that.
I could see a Watto clone and him as a tag team that works much better than just him by himself as presentation wise. They look
it is interesting because both of these guys, just for Kobe World Hall, which is their Wrestle Kingdom, both of these guys have this Chinese tag team all of a sudden. It's way more than. That's the reason we'll probably never do wrestling in Dragon Gate, because it would take 8 episodes. But so quick question before we move on to the tag team thing in our rapid fire format here. Have you been able to watch any WWE post Vince McMahon, or have you heard anything?
I watched SummerSlam.
What'd you think of that? We didn't talk about that, right? That was like
No, we might have. I don't know if we even texted. It was entertained. I was sports entertained by it, I guess.
I was sports entertained. Yeah,
Um,
SummerSlam I felt like was not too different from what we'd been seeing before.
No, I will say the tag team work that the Usos and Street Profits are doing is fantastic. Um, you know, I guess Luke Paul's a pretty good wrestler, but he's such a garbage person. I have a hard time, getting attached to anything he does. Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee is okay.
You said Jake Paul, by the way. You meant
Jake
Logan
Paul, Logan Paul, whatever.
I want to kind of clarify that because I feel I've been doing a good amount of research on the guy, and I don't know if he deserves all the hate he's gotten. Now, he did shitty stuff.
The Japanese thing is really bad, though.
He has came out and said that was like one of the most embarrassing things he's ever done. And that, like, he was young and really, really dumb. And that was years ago, and you're right. It was terrible. It was real, real bad, actually.
Like, I don't think he'll ever be able to do anything in Japan. That's, But,
believe me, WWE's not going to take him to the Budokan.
I was going to say, with my wife being Japanese, that's unforgivable stuff.
Wow.
But... Yeah, I mean, I guess he's young. He's a great athlete and all that stuff, and it does behoove WWE to use guys like that as talent because they need that mainstream kind of, draw in. And Pat McAfee, I don't really. I mean, he comes out there, dressed like he's going to some beach party or whatever.
Yeah, what's up with that? I was thinking the same thing, bro. Like, what's up with the all black and, like, the weird shorts and, like...
I just feel like I'm watching David Portnoy wrestle or something, and it's like... or, like, somebody from Barstool Sports. That's what... I mean, but then I see the appeal and the reason why WWE has him as part of it, and he's a good commentator, and he's got a lot of enthusiasm, and I appreciate that and everything, but there's just some... There's a douchiness that I get from the douche chills. If you ever watched Arrested Development.
We've known on this show that you have a history with McAfee. You're like, it's not really my cup of tea kind of thing.
I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I understand his appeal, but it's just not. And I don't necessarily dislike him or hate him. It's just not for me. That's all. And his commentary's been improving and growing on me, but his in-ring involvement and the jumping on top of the desk kind of stuff is I'm not really
I don't blame you for the jumping on top of the desk.
I will say overall the post Vince McMahon stuff, SummerSlam, I didn't need the tractor and that was stupid. I'm sorry.
I liked it.
I liked
when they lifted the ring. That was fun. That was so WWE.
Roman took a great bump, and that was entertaining at the end, and it did sports entertain me. That's the whole thing.
WWE has a history with large vehicles entering the ring.
You know what though? There we weren't necessarily during matches per se. Like Stone Cold driving in with the pickup truck, and the beer thing, and the milk truck with
the
Kurt
milk
Angle.
truck.
Good stuff.
I'm sure there was a Zamboni at one point.
Zamboni, yeah, there was. Just the Zamboni and then Austin just jumped Luthez pressing Vince.
So,
but no, listen,
I thought it was right for the course.
It was a pretty good, entertaining show, and obviously you and I are still I still prefer the New Japan style presentation over anything else, and of course it's
well, I think that'll be always.
It's apples and oranges. I think they're just completely different products. They're different. And I will say, I was going to say, Michael Cole's commentary has been so much better without Vince, in his ear the entire. And if there's anyone in that company I'm happy for, it's Michael Cole.
Did you hear that the words wrestler and wrestling are now allowed to be spoken?
That's good. That's great news. Good.
It's almost like one of those things that's like when someone brags about being a good parent. It's like, well, you're just supposed to be a good parent. Like, you don't need to brag. Now it's like, we get to say wrestling. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you kind of like, yeah, that's what you've been doing this whole fucking time.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's going to be better. It's give it a year so they can kind of rinse out any of that kind of stubbornness and staleness, and it'll get better, I think.
Well, it still has to be popular to the masses, right? So
Yeah, that's where you're
necessarily
gonna
have to be popular to a hardcore fan base like us.
That's where you're still gonna have your Logan Pauls and your Pat McAfee's involved, and your occasional, Bad Bunny match. But at least that those guys seem to have they're not just forcing these people in; they're selecting people that actually have somewhat of an understanding or ability that can contribute. They're not going to just, I don't know, grab, Chris Pratt and throw him in a multi-man tag or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
Although they would, if he wanted
never
to,
do
he would do it. But
if he wanted to.
You're
By
not,
the way,
you're not going to
Logan
see.
Paul. I like Logan Paul better than Dave Portnoy, by the way. But that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Or Andrew Tate or any of those TikTok.
Oh God,
douchebags.
Andrew Tate. That's not even someone we've ever talked about on this show, but probably doesn't belong on this show. God, I've heard so much about that guy over the past 3-4 months.
And I put TikTok, TikSchmock, whatever, back on my phone so I can start doing stuff on it, and it's just all the garbage on there,
bro. It is what you make of it. It's if you get garbage, then you just don't like those videos and you keep going through and you like the ones that are funny, and eventually the algorithm will start helping you out
I
a
need
little.
to mute some stuff on there, I guess.
I have my friend's TikTok, one of my best friend's TikToks. I'm not even going to say it on air, but he's cultivated into something real fucked up. But that's definitely not for this show.
Tag teams.
So,
let's just do tag teams already. We already gone down the
yeah,
WWE
I wanted
getting
to
better.
Say, I wanted to say one more thing about WWE, and that's they did give Ciampa a little push.
I didn't understand the fact that he's out with The Miz. I totally missed that storyline.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it doesn't seem to be anymore.
Okay, see, I don't know. So I'm like, why is he out there with The Miz? But
then supposedly Sasha and
Naomi are
coming back. Yep,
Okay,
Naomi
good.
coming back. So good on them. Some interesting stuff developing, but we already knew this and we already talked about this. This wasn't going to be an overnight thing. It'll be something that takes months and months and months to transition. And very interesting though. WWE is really hot right now. Have you seen that? Their ratings are very good. And on Twitter, on my Twitter, a lot of people are talking about WWE.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely getting some buzz. I think, people are interested in, AVKM, after Vince Kennedy McMahon. So I think they're interested to see where the company goes.
PV and AV.
Yeah, I think people are interested to see, what happens with Triple H in charge. Because I think you and I, in our story with WWE, where we got back in, we fell in love with NXT and, some of the stuff that was going on the main roster. And we have faded away the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Well, you quickly learn that every time you have hope, your hope gets betrayed.
Yeah, they suck you back in, but it was just once I stopped watching, it was really easy to not watch again because it's a big commitment to commit to 5 hours of television, and I know they even offer even more than that. But I was watching.
I'll never watch those shows again live.
I was watching the Hulu cuts of all of them the next day, pretty religiously up until it was a mixture. It was when Brock Lesnar won Money in the Bank. What was that, 2018 or something like that? 2017.
Oh God, yeah, 2018, 2019.
So when that happened, I remember it's just my life was getting a little busier and stressful for that reason, and I stopped watching around that time because I just felt like it was a Money in the Bank where there was a lot of interesting competitors. I was like, oh, this could really help Kevin Owens. It'd be great for Sami Zayn or whatever. I was going through the whole, oh, this is going to be a really exciting match. And then they just throw Brock out there and let him win it out of nowhere, just like they did this year.
Unannounced. An unannounced competitor at the end.
And then I was like, man, like, why do I, like, they're just going to do whatever they want anyway. And I've never been, like, really a Brock guy. It's just I've explained.
You don't stand Brock?
I mean, he's an amazing athlete, intimidating and a monster, but like I just don't like those guys that show up whenever they want and just no matter what happens they'll just win because they're them, I don't know.
No, but, man, I agree with you. Once I heard about NXT and New Japan, it was like it became really hard to keep going back to WWE except for the big shows, and it's over time I think it got even worse. So there's just some ridiculous booking decisions and scripted promos that just sound terrible and awkward, things that happen, and it still happens. I mean, you look at Liv Morgan like getting booed and just an awkward situation.
Look, I said, it's going to take a little time to clean up some of that stuff, but it'll get better. I think it'll get better this time. It has to.
I think so, and we hope so. We definitely hope so, because we just want to see awesome wrestling.
Yeah,
right.
And they need to make sure they get The Rock next year at WrestleMania. Otherwise, they're going to be screwed. They're not going to sell out. Well, they're going to have a hard time with the filling LA.
Surely if The Rock wrestles, it will be a little more entertaining than Ric Flair wrestling, which I actually refused to watch that main event. Did you watch it at all?
There was actually a really good undercard that I watched. I threw it on.
Not the undercard, though. I'm talking about the main event of that.
I watched some of it, and I'm going to share the
From what I heard, I just heard, like, it's hard to watch.
It was way too long, and I knew right away, like, I don't know why, but, like, Ric Flair came out there wearing a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, he's 73 years old. The guy has constantly cheated death and continues to do it every day. And for a 73-year-old man, the things he was doing, highly have a lot of respect for. But I
heard he passed out mid-match, bro.
Probably. I mean, he had the bleed, and to me, it's like, it's just, it didn't need to happen. You know what I mean? Like, at least he was in the hands of somebody like Jay Lethal, who has been, training him. So if anyone knew the situation, and his son-in-law. So I mean, he had some, good people around him to take care of him, but it's just, to me, was just unnecessary. And
I heard he was shaking, like they couldn't give him the brass knuckles. Now I say I heard this stuff. Like, honestly, I don't want to watch it. Like, I don't want to see someone at the end of their rope.
I was doing some, like, I was in and out of the room at the time, so I didn't see the whole thing. But like, you had Bret Hart, Mick Foley, and The Undertaker sitting next to each other in the front row. And I could just feel like The Undertaker and Bret Hart is like, Rick, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Are you serious?
I know. Seriously, look at The Undertaker. Like, once he started going downhill, he's like, he did a few more matches, and he's like, yeah, fuck this.
And somebody like Mick Foley, who's like, one small trip over a sidewalk from being in a wheelchair with what he's been through in his career, and a guy who's, he's even 60 yet? He's not that old.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, and to see a guy like, you have a lot of respect, because I mean, Ric Flair is probably one of those dudes who'll go to the gym and he probably has fantastic cardio still and all that stuff. It's just probably all the alcohol that he continues to put in his body and just the bad stuff that keeps him from doing somewhat, I guess, regular things. I have a lot of respect. Ric Flair's might be the greatest in-ring performer. He's definitely in the top 5.
Well, look, the guy has probably a minor form of, something I just learned about it, histrionic personality disorder. I'm not diagnosing him, and I could be totally wrong, but they often behave dramatically or inappropriately to get attention,
Well, I think he could also have some self-esteem issues too, like
Sure.
where he constantly has to feel like he's that guy from 1983.
Yeah, wanting to relive that.
And that's a difficult thing. So
and he could have needed money, right?
I mean, I could see Conrad saying, hey, let's get your last match then, Pops.
And of course he's his family member. And
hey,
he's
man,
like a pretty big hustler in the industry.
I will if you need money, Conrad will find a way to make you some money.
Go to Save with I'm just
I'm not trying to do a commercial, but like I know I mostly have a positive take on Conrad Thompson.
I like Conrad.
I like Conrad
He's
a
good
lot.
on his shows.
I think a lot of the reason why
he is a hustler. He's a salesperson.
Yes, he is, and shameless about it too. But honestly, you and I might not be talking to each other like this if it wasn't for Conrad Thompson and what he's done. I mean, it's true. Let's be honest. I mean,
no, I think that's more the Super J Cast.
Super J. Well, I mean, no, just in terms of just like two dudes doing a podcast on wrestling. I mean, Conrad Thompson is a big influence on that. Colt Cabana. Yeah. I'm not saying he's the reason. Obviously, the Super J Cast is the reason why we started conversing in general. But I mean, he's resurrected. I mean, you talk about like Quentin Tarantino with John Travolta. Vince McMahon. I mean, Conrad Thompson has done that for Bruce Pritchard. I guess in a respect, he's done it for Tony Schiavone. Right?
Yeah. No, I mean, he's done a lot. I mean, he literally made Bruce Pritchard back into probably a millionaire. So.
Well, and Bruce Pritchard right now is probably the number 2 to 3 person or 4 or 5. He's in the top 5 in WWE now.
You gotta admit, he kind of came out of nowhere and had influence.
And this was a guy that they
he was already wealthy.
This was a guy, Bruce Pritchard, who was pretty much not blackballed necessarily, but like there was one of those guys that was never. He was in Vince Russo territory, someone that was never going back.
Yeah.
And
now he's like you said, he's up there. He's actually doing talent relations and stuff, I believe.
Yeah,
unless that's all Triple H.
He's probably got to be the top. Unless, he gets labeled in with Vince, and they talked about Kevin Dunn on the outs too.
Oh yeah. Hey, by the way, did you ever see that Dr. Tom Pritchard? That's his brother, right?
Yeah. Part of a tag team at some point.
He was in a tag team. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him in a tag team.
Body Donnas, was he Skip and Flip, right? Wasn't he? Wasn't he with Chris Candido? The Body Donnas?
There we go. Yeah. Well, it's my terrible attempt at a segue. So, guys, we are going to talk today about tag team wrestling. We're finally here. I need to put timestamps on this one. I forgot if people like it when we do the main stuff first and then the other stuff, or vice versa. But this is tag team wrestling.
We're about 28-17 in. I've never heard either way.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going off of ratings, I guess, and views. But we'll have to figure that out. I want to say that there was a Data East game called Tag Team Pro Wrestling for the NES, and that'd be funny if we just did a whole episode, just Tag Team Pro Wrestling. Do you remember that one? Not Pro Wrestling, Tag Team Pro Wrestling.
Is that the one that... No, that wasn't the one that had the Legion of Doom on the cover. That was like a WCW game. But
I just think it would be funny if we did the whole episode about that. But no, we're not. We are actually talking about tag team.
We will do wrestling in video games at some point. That will be a thing.
That's actually coming up probably in the next few months here. But Justin, we don't need to explain to the fans what tag team wrestling is. However, cage match... What are the people on Cage Match called? The fucking cell people? What are they called? The inmates, right?
I don't know.
Cage Match has a great description. All right? This is tag team wrestling. Okay. When two wrestlers join forces, it may result in a marriage, a child, and sometimes something quite embarrassing. In most cases, however, The new combination is more harmless because joined forces in wrestling are often no more or less than so-called tag teams. The wrestlers will fight rivals together, win titles together, switch places in the car on the way to the next show, and more. Would you say good description?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
everyone
not all
knows
tag
what tag
teams
team
can have
wrestling
children.
is.
Yeah, we do.
No, you can have mixed.
That's true.
But again, which
That's
is
true.
makes me sad. I just realized I didn't do any notes on mixed tag teams. But this subject
Yeah.
goes so
There's-
deep, right?
And there's very few mixed tag teams, and if you did, you'd have to bring up.
Yeah, we know. Yeah,
Okay, so we're not
uh,
going to do that shit.
let's not. But
We're
but
going
the
to stay
point
off
is
that Jungle Cruise.
I thought this, honestly, Justin, when I started doing notes, I thought this subject would be a little more simple, but then I started realizing how in-depth tag team wrestling and the history of wrestling is. And there's two things I want to say before we get into the meat of this episode. One is that this is going to be pretty American-centric, and we've mentioned this before on episodes, but we are products of our environment. I tried squeezing a bunch of Japanese stuff in here, but as far as Mexican and European stuff, it was pretty hard to come by. And we know that Mexico probably has a great history of tag team and trios. So, and I would say, if you are listening to this and you want to tell us, hit us up. We would love to hear what you have to say.
Definitely.
So, this is going to be more American-centric with some Japanese stuff. The second thing is I want to thank a guy named Jamie Greer, who wrote this incredible piece for LWOS. And he wrote, the rise and fall and rise again of tag team wrestling, a great piece for a company, a website I've never heard of, LWOS. And he had a lot more info than, the Wikipedias and all that other stuff. So thank you,
Awesome.
Jamie Greer, who I based my notes off of. So, let's get into this. So, tag team wrestling is pretty much as old as wrestling, okay? As far as professional wrestling, but even getting before that into work wrestling, the idea of a tag team is has to be worked in a way because there has to be some kind of cooperation. I mean, right? If it was they don't have tag team MMA in America, right? That's a weird Russian thing.
Never heard of it. Didn't even know the Russians had it. But when
When
you
one
have
guy
to.
gets fucked up. Yeah, go ahead.
You have to have some type of charismatic chemistry with your partner. You don't necessarily have to work together in the ring per se, and maybe some double team moves. You still have to be able to work with the other wrestlers. So sometimes there's got to be some type of aesthetic look that you share or that contrast. But there has to be some kind of chemistry between you that make you a believable team, right?
You've got to be a believable team, the teamwork idea. And in shoot wrestling, back in the early 1900s, which I've been studying quite a bit of, the matches went on for hours, and I could kind of see there being a tag mechanic there. At the same time, though, you would just do that thing where you cut off the it's just what they do in modern pro wrestling, but it's more obviously fixed, or I hate that word, scripted, and that's that you cut the ring in half, right? You've heard that term, right,
Yeah,
Justin?
sure. Yeah.
I feel like in shoot wrestling, it would be a lot easier to cut the ring in half and just hold a guy for hours, and he would never get to tag in. So my assumption is that tag team wrestling and wrestling being worked is kind of hand in hand, because tag team wrestling, it almost has to have a bit of a work to work, right?
Yeah, and I think that I don't even know how a tag team fight would even exist under.
Which is why they don't do it
Yeah.
in MMA, like I said. They've done it in Russia. I think in Russia they've had 3-on-3 fights, but the issue is when one guy gets fucked up, it becomes 3-on-2, right? So really it's just a fight of beating up one guy, and then but we're talking about pro wrestling, not shoot wrestling, but obviously it kind of started that way. So it is old though. The first tag team match on record was in 1901 in San Francisco. And it kind of added some diversity, and some more entertainment to the card. The idea was fun. And so not surprising that it's really old. It actually became like a regional thing, you know what I'm saying? So like certain regions had the tag team stuff going on. Certain regions had no tag team stuff going on. And eventually it actually became national in the 30s. But all the way until the 50s, I don't know if you knew this, but there was no tag team championship until the 50s.
It's a long time to go without. Yeah, it's a long time to go without kind of a way to determine who's the best, right?
Yeah, so I'm guessing, like it said, it was more regional, right? It was just a sideshow kind of a thing, right?
I guess it would be kind of like Little People, or I guess to a degree what women's wrestling was for a while.
Yeah, it happens in certain places, and but obviously in America there's no minis champion. I don't think WWE's ever done that, right?
No, okay. It's always been like a sideshow, and
Where in Mexico there are though.
Yeah, I mean that I believe, but I think even to this day tag teams still aren't always seen as like a main event, except for we had FTR and the Briscoes recently at the ROH.
We'll get into that too.
Yeah.
We'll get into the changes that have happened, because the last 10 years in the last 5 years there's been a huge shift in tag team. Maybe the last 10 years, but so the first tag team champions that we know of, I mean, and maybe there were some before this, but I have here World Tag Champions in 1950s. San Francisco NWA, Ray Eckert and Hard-Boiled Haggerty over Ronnie Etchison and Larry McQuinn. So what do you know about these four guys, Justin? Because I know nothing. Never even heard of them.
No, never heard of them.
Never heard of them, which is sad. But I'm sure
I was
they had
thinking
their own lives. And
San Francisco, you were going to mention Pat Patterson, but I even think the 50s was a bit of a stretch for...
Before him.
Yeah, him and Ray Stevens,
Yeah, I think that's getting into the 60s and 70s, I believe. So even though they had that championship, it was never considered, and this is what you were talking about, right? It was never considered remotely on the same level as a singles match on the show. Yeah, so the largest governing body for, and you know this, what was the largest wrestling governing body in the 1900s?
The National Wrestling Alliance.
Exactly. They didn't actually have an NWA World Tag Team Champion until 1982.
That's pretty surprising, because I know the NWA... Wow. What tag team... I gotta really... Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So I think... and again, this is Jamie Greer who wrote all this stuff up. Amazing piece that he did. Go check it out, Jamie. Guys, on LWOS.
Oh, not LWO? Latino World Order?
A Latino World Order S. Yeah, that is what it is. He was writing for the Latino World Order. He says that a retconned history of the NWA by the Crockett-owned NWA of the 80s linked the World Tag Team lineage to 1975. So there were like other belts then, and then they weren't back and like, oh, actually the belt started, but you know what I'm saying? Like, even though they really started in 82.
Wow, sounds like around the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express era, huh?
I think that was a little more mid to late 80s here. The Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, which a lot of people I've heard love. That was 75, and that was the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into names we know. So this was Gene and Ole Anderson.
Sure.
The Minnesota Wrecking Crew. So there you go. Now in 92, the Mid-Atlantic Championship and the NWA Championship were unified with in 92, the NWA titles were unified with the WCW Championship, and this was Terry Gordy, right? We know Terry Gordy. Bam Bam Gordy, not Bigelow. So when Bam Bam Gordy and Dr. Death, Steve Williams, who we're going to talk about a lot, has amazing tag team history. They defeated Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes.
We're in the mid 80s or late 80s with this stuff already. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you skipped, right? I mean, I'm not saying, just saying, like, tag teams were kind of a stepchild for a very long time leading up to the 80s, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. The NWA seems like they didn't take it super seriously until the 80s. And then they didn't even, like, combine it with the WCW things until the, early 90s. But we'll jump back here. So, when we think about tag team wrestling and you think about modern WWE, you kind of know that Vince McMahon is not really a tag team guy.
No, and he had a simple reason for it, too. It was, I have to pay 2 guys for 1 match.
What was that his thing?
I think that was part of it, is when you have tag teams, you have double the salary. Well, not necessarily double the salary, but you have double the... Everything costs more. To run. A tag team match has four salaries, and they're not...
It was pure economic efficiency.
Yes, I think that was part of it. There's 2 hotel rooms. There's this, and you know what I mean? So I think the economics of tag team wrestling... We're just not, for something that's not going to be your main event, and not have the star power. Like, that's why tag team wrestling had always taken a back seat to Vince McMahon, and at least from what I heard.
And kind of following off that, Justin, I had heard that Vince McMahon, like, either made the claim or believed that the purpose of tag team wrestling was to make single stars,
and that is a very common theme in WWE in the mid 80s to early 90s, right?
Totally. The Rockers, the
Hart Foundation,
Bret Hart. So, but when you think about modern Vince McMahon, by the way, listen to our last episode. We did a whole thing on him. His dad was actually ahead of the NWA when it came to recognizing tag team wrestling. Because he crowned the first WWF World Tag Team Champions in 1971.
Wow.
So, yeah. So he a big difference between father and son, and even that New York territory kind of ahead of the NWA at the time. And that was Crazy Luke Graham and Tarzan Tyler. Not to be confused with Jungle Boy Jack. So.
Not to be confused.
Yeah. Tarzan Tyler is not currently feuding with Christian. So while Vince McMahon, our Vince McMahon, we know, had his share of great tag teams, such as Mr. Fuji and Professor Tanaka. Mr. Fuji was a good wrestler before he became a manager. Did you know that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was he, actually American? That's the funny thing.
He's from Hawaii, I think.
Yeah, like, it's funny because a lot of these Japanese guys from the 70s and 80s, like, you're like, oh, they're from Hawaii.
And Yokozuna was from was Samoan, so...
Yeah, he wasn't even Japanese at all, dude.
No.
I mean, they got a lot of heat from that, actually, from the Japanese American Foundation.
His name was Rodney. So...
Yeah, Rodney
I remember my uncle telling me when he worked at Paramount in the print shop that, it was the early 90s and they were talking about Yokozuna, and one of the guys in the shop or the office there was like, it's my cousin Rodney. So
that's
there you
funny,
go.
Dude. You ever actually try turkey dipped in mayonnaise?
Hell no. It's disgusting.
That does sound terrible, doesn't it?
I'm not really a mayonnaise guy.
Yeah, me neither. Like, maybe on a certain sandwich I'll like it.
It's
but
just
like,
a little bit on a sandwich just to, like,
little bit on a sandwich.
To moisten it up a little bit. Like, I'm talking...
sandwich?
Like a half a tablespoon, and that's it. Very, very little.
I agree.
Like on an Italian sub or something, just to keep it a little lubricated, to get down the gullet.
I agree. I also like, what is the fancy word for mayonnaise? It's like aoi or aioli. Those are okay too.
Well, an aioli usually has like an element like a chipotle or something kind of.
If only Rodney knew about aioli, he could have been dipping his turkey legs in chipotle aioli.
Oh, No. Well, anyway,
So
gross.
we had Mr. Fuji and Professor Tanaka, right? We had the
Professor
Blackjacks.
Toro Tanaka, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Blackjacks, right? And the Wild Samoans. Speaking of. So was that Sika and Alpha? Was that their names?
A lot of ethnically themed tag teams we're noticing.
That's not even really necessarily changed in WWE, sadly. But I want to make sure these guys are named Sika and Alpha, and I'm not being a total failure. The Samoan Warriors.
I don't think so. I think those were the head shrinkers at one point.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
it could have been
the Wild Samoans. So Vince Jr. Our retired Vince McMahon now. He was different though. Like you said, and like I mentioned, he had a different philosophy. And back then, it was an avenue to make less personable athletes kind of earning money. Mm-hmm. So, and it goes into that economic efficiency thing you're saying. Like older guys, he can pay them less, and he can pay two of them as much as he pays one of his big stars. And they can stay wrestling and be on TV.
Yeah, and I think they kind of, if the right word is, like, kind of diversify the card to have another element to it, You have a tag team, you have a women's match.
Yeah, mix in some of that stuff. So, as we know, and we talked about before, he purchased the company from his dad, Capital Wrestling, WWF, and after that, in the early 80s, and in the 80s, you had some real good, actually, tag teams in WWF. So we started then, we had some tag teams that are starting to get more into like the serious tag team stuff. Now, of course, it sounds like back in the day there were very serious tag team stuff before that. So no disrespect to any of those guys, but we don't really have the opportunity to watch those matches right now. And we weren't raised on it either, so it's something we're still learning. But in the 80s, we had the British Bulldogs, right?
Yep, you did.
Volkov and the Iron Sheik.
Mm-hmm.
Hart Foundation, Demolition. And help me out with this group, the Killer Bees, Justin.
Yeah, Brian Blair and
Brian Blair.
Yeah, I'm trying to. The other one slipping my mind right now.
But
they were a big
Brian
one.
Blair. I had heard of him quite a bit.
Yeah.
So let's figure out who those people are real quick. It was okay. So it was Jim Brunzell.
There you go.
Jim Brunzell and. Brian Blair. Jim Brunzell. That's not Macho Man's brother, is it?
No, that would be Lanny Poffo.
Lanny Poffo, yeah. So jumping Jim Brunzell, Brian Blair, the Killer Bees. Terrible outfit, though. It's like WWF starting to get into ridiculous gimmicks here. But when I mentioned that they were wanting, or Vince was wanting to pull singles from this, we had people like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the early 90s start popping out of the tag team division, right? The Rockers, who was actually a really good team, too.
The Rockers?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Rockers were great. And they had some great stuff with, Arn and Tully when they were there for a minute. And, and that was a big tag team in the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. So WWF doing good stuff in the tag teams, obviously becoming I'm going to say okay stuff with the tag teams, but very good wrestlers involved. And they were not focused on it for the most part, but they existed. We want to go to Japan in the 80s and early 90s. There was actually some incredible stuff being done in Japan at this point. Maybe we've mentioned this, but have you seen Crockett and Furnace versus Kobashi and Kikuchi?
You mean Furnace and LaFon?
Yeah, but I think he called himself Crockett, right?
Right. No, I've definitely heard of that match. I don't know if I've seen it, but I know that was Furnace and LaFon.
Profit.
I think you could also... I'll call them Furnace and LaFon because that's what they were in WWE in that.
Okay, The
early
Pan
to
Am
mid
Express
'90s.
was another name.
But I'm just saying the Furnace and LaFon might have aided to Vince McMahon still not liking tag teams, because here was one of the best tag teams over in Japan, and they were
Yeah.
brought over here and they absolutely flopped.
Really?
Yeah, they did not, kind of get over like they thought, or somebody from the office said, hey, these guys are unbelievable matches in Japan, bring them to America, and they just did not get over whatsoever
Wow.
in WWE.
Which is crazy because they
WWF
were
at the
incredibly talented. And I'm sorry, Crawford, of course, LaFon, also Pan Am Express, a few different names. That Crawford and Furnace versus Kikuchi Kobashi was voted the best match of the year when it happened, and it's one of those matches that is often in that kind of panorama of best wrestling crowds, hottest wrestling crowds of all time. So
Yeah.
you had some pretty crazy stuff going on in Japan. Some amazing teams. There were some women's teams in Japan that were extremely popular, but we're going to talk about women's teams actually
Jumping
later.
Bomb Angels were one of my favorite things of the old WWE stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
They were awesome.
So we have again we'll have some women's stuff later to talk about the kind of mini history of that. But again in Japan we had AJPW doing some awesome stuff. We had Terry Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams. We had the Funks in Japan. We had Brody and Hansen in Japan. And later on you had stuff like the Holy Demon Army. Plus, of course, tons of teams I'm not mentioning. Probably some stuff in New Japan also. But really, Japan back then, we couldn't watch it because we weren't tape traders and stuff like that. But I'd say some of the hottest tag team wrestling was going on there. However, we didn't mention the late 80s, early 90s, and NWA, right? So
Right.
this was like American tag, what some people consider like the hottest period in American tag team wrestling. Do you remember some of the teams from back then?
Probably had the Road Warriors.
Yep.
Probably
Steiner
Arn Telly.
Brothers,
Yeah, the Steiner Brothers, the Freebirds.
the Rock and Roll Express,
Yeah, Midnight Express.
Midnight Express, and these guys became more than just pairings of partners, and they were showing off personalities and group maneuvers, tag maneuvers that covered each other's weaknesses and promoted their strengths, which was really cool. So we're starting to get into the psychology of tag team wrestling that really advanced in this early period. You had teams that were, like you were saying, like very similar to each other. You had
Yes.
like, they looked the same, right? They had this, you look at the Road Warriors and it's just like, they almost look the same, but they both have their own badass thing going on, right? But
They
just-
were, you could never separate them.
Yeah.
Without, I don't know how, you could never separate them in a story. You could have tension between them, but they would always be tied to each other, even if they weren't at odds. They'd have to, if they weren't, they could not be single stars. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it was one of those things almost like the Young Bucks now. And the Young Bucks can have great singles matches, don't get me wrong, but it's
Absolutely.
like one has to go with the other. And
There's-
it's like,
yeah.
that's just how it works. You're not going to see one of these guys want to go be a single star because they don't want to. They want to tag wrestle, bro. They want to wrestle with their partner. And that's where they've seen their success. Again, with the Steiner brothers, the Midnight Express. I've seen the Midnight Express feud where Paulie Dangerously and Jim Cornette are all involved in that.
They
You
had
had
a
teams like,
tuxedo match, yeah.
you have the Fantastics back then who were really cool. Very cheesy tag
Yeah.
team. Very cheesy. Watching them
You know what,
flounce
though?
around.
There was a lot of, especially with the WWF, tag teams were kind of like they were always had a higher energy. Some of them were just like younger wrestlers too. I think, like we said, I think Vince used it as a vehicle to get younger guys over and see which one would get out of it. And there's no two bigger examples than two of the greatest of all time, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, all started from WWF tag teams.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. I totally agree. So a lot of crazy stuff going on, really, in the late '80s, early '90s on the tag front. Some really great stuff there. So from there, you kind of go on to the Monday Night Wars after that, and you had some really cool stuff going on there, right? You had who do you think of as tag teams in the Monday Night Wars slash
The
Attitude Era?
Outsiders,
The Outsiders,
the New Age
Dudley
Outlaws.
Boys. New Age Outlaws, yup. The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys, kind of on the outer limits of the Attitude Era.
Edge
You
and
had
Christian, though?
they were kind of towards the outer limits of that. You had Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie, aka Terry Funk.
Oh, wow, I didn't know about that one.
You did have the Road Warriors.
Was that in ECW?
No, it was in WWF. They had Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. They were in WrestleMania 14 against the New Age Outlaws in a dumpster match.
Oh, boy.
Great
that
story.
was the one where he got really kind of fucked up, huh?
That was on a Raw where they threw him over. Great stuff with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. And then they were 1 and 2 in the Royal Rumble, and they beat the shit out of each other in '98.
Why was he called Chainsaw Charlie?
The dude literally, Kerry Funk literally came out there with like a red Henley, a pantyhose over his head, and had a chainsaw. And he looked like kind of a Leatherface kind of deal. Hilarious stuff.
And he was working backstage for WWE too?
No, he was on the singles roster, which led to him, even in the Attitude Era, being with Too Cold Scorpio as a tag team for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, '98's a trip with what they do with Terry Funk. But anyways,
wow.
Attitude Era. You had the Legion of Doom kind of come back. You had the factions that would have a tag team. So you have everything from D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry to what were they called? 8 Ball and Skull, who were also the Blue Bloods. What was that group they were in?
Aren't the guys from
DOA.
the Power Rangers?
No. DOA, who a lot of people thought, hey, they would look like they were twins that had shaved heads that would wear vests, so they looked like Stone Cold.
Oh, I see.
So you had DOA, you had, and then you just had some other random tag teams that are slipping my mind. And you would have on the other channel, you had the Outsiders, you had the Steiners.
Steiners, yep.
I'm trying to think. Harlem Heat.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
I'm trying to think of some of the other tag teams in that era. But, the New Age Outlaws were that one that really stood out, where it took 2 guys that weren't really good singles wrestlers, and one that was literally Jeff Jarrett's, like, hype man, and made them into sometimes a tag team can be 2 guys that really weren't cutting it as single stars, and then all of a sudden they hit it big as a tag team. The New Age Outlaws are a big example of that.
Gosh, they were one of those things kind of like, also that was kind of like the Brood, where they started with kind of a dumb gimmick, but I ended up breaking out of it because... No, I'm sorry, I'm mixing this up. This is totally wrong.
Well, you talking
I'm thinking
Acolytes.
of the original, I'm thinking of Bart and Billy Gunn, actually.
Right, Smoking Guns. So Billy Gunn was
Smoking
kind of...
Guns, yeah.
Well, Billy Gunn, in a way, was a failed tag team guy that finally caught on with a very kind of odd matchup, but it worked so well. Because they were a tag team that really dominated that era. I know people name a great New Age Outlaws match. Like, it's hard to really say that, but they were the top tag team in that Attitude Era for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, obviously the Harlem Heat, Stevie Ray, right, and Booker T.
Stevie Ray and Booker T. Yep, and there's some others too, but the main ones in WCW are probably the Steiners. There was always those de facto tag teams that would join up for some reason. Like, you'd have the Rock and Sock connection, or
that's
Stone Cold and Dude Love winning the titles for a minute. And
that's what I wanted to move to next, was that it was like they became opportunities to maximize the potential of 2 already established wrestlers.
Yeah.
Right? So you had the 2-man power trip, Triple H and Stone Cold. And you had other stuff, like you said, the Rock and Sock connection, right?
Yeah, and Stone Cold and Dude Love, Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels, believe it or not, were tag team champions at one point.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels was maybe early '97. No, maybe at some point they were like the reluctant tag team champions, and then Dude Love and Stone Cold were tag team champions at one point as well.
And through all this, you had some really cool stuff. But again, this is Vince McMahon running this, where tag teams were kind of mid-card stuff for the most part, right?
They were mid-card stuff, or they were something to give a main eventer when they were temporarily out of the top of the card for whatever reason. I think WWF has been really famous for that. We'll stick them in a superstar tag team for a while, whether it was, Kane and The Undertaker, or, you know what I mean? It was always a secondary way to get a couple more guys over, and then it would kind of maybe it was Mankind and Kane that were tag team for a while too. Like, they tend to always have that.
Brothers of Destruction.
Yeah, they'd have a super team. I guess the same could be said about the Outsiders. That was two great superstar singles wrestlers who they threw into a tag team.
And you see stuff like that today sometimes in WWE when you think of like Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins becoming tag champions, right?
Absolutely.
So I know the Dusty Cup, which they do in NXT, was like a few years was won by two singles guy. I think it was Samoa Joe and Finn Balor who won that one year. And so still kind of that idea does persist there, and it can be done. It's not a bad booking tactic at all, especially when you keep guys busy. So you and I were not TNA guys, right?
No,
okay, but they came out in 2004, and they kind of they had some, from what I've heard, some pretty cool teams at the time, and probably some guys we know about. There's America's Most Wanted, which was Wildcat Chris Harris and Cowboy James Storm. There was Triple X, Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, and Low Key. There was the original LAX, Homicide and Hernandez. And now I'm confused here. What wasn't what are the Pride and Powerful, Ortiz and
I think they're just Santana and Ortiz. They were LAX for a minute, but
they took the name.
Yeah, they had LAX until they went to AEW.
But Homicide and Hernandez were the original LAX.
I don't know the lineage with that name, but they're not from LA, so that always weirded me out.
I know, they're like from the East Coast.
They're from New York, man.
You had
Santana and Ortiz. They're Puerto Rican too.
Yeah. So. You had Team Canada. Do you know who those were?
Lance Storm and somebody else?
No, it was Bobby Roode and Eric Young.
Okay. Canadians, definitely.
Yeah. But really, besides TNA in the 2000s, man, where tag team wrestling started getting a lot of respect was on the indie scene. And some of these names I'm going to mention, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So not only was it doing good, but some of these tag matches in the 2000s were really thriving. Ring of Honor, right? So you had these Ring of Honor tag teams, and it's just like, my God, man. And this actually starts to fall in with PWG also sometime there in the mid to later 2000s. Second City Saints, do you know who that is?
Some people from Chicago. Was that Colt Cabana and CM Punk?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. When do you think they're going to come back?
As a team together?
Yeah.
Fuck. I mean, I don't. I would love to see it happen. Wouldn't that be like all we need to complete that AEW storyline with CM Punk coming back, him and Colt Cabana being hand in hand and good again? Wouldn't that be nice?
It'd be beautiful,
but I unfortunately think it would have happened by now, unless it's just going to be some kind of surprise they're hiding.
Or they just don't like each other and it'll never happen, which is a huge possibility. Because
from what we hear, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that they would not be affiliated with each other.
I mean, how often do you see them posing together on Instagram? Just think of it that way. I'm sure they would have done it by now if
they were good. I think they have a very professional working relationship. As long
sure.
as they're not forced to be in the same room, or who knows? They probably do pass each other here and there.
It's like an ex-girlfriend, right? That you work with. You don't really talk to her, but if you
Yeah,
have to,
I bet
have
you
to.
they're very professional, and it's not a big deal because they just, both choose to be professionals about everything. So.
Yeah, they're not like, get the fuck out of my way.
But I would love
hate
to
you.
see that again. Wouldn't that be wonderful if CM Punk's getting attacked one day and then you hear Colt Cabana come out and make the save, or vice versa? Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be cool, although they're on totally different levels now also. But
Yeah.
Colt Cabana, I've seen him live. He's pretty damn good, actually. He's like one of the comedy wrestlers that I actually think is actually a really good wrestler.
No, he is. And I loved his New Japan Cup run from a few years ago. That was so much fun.
Did some interesting stuff in DDT also, but, that's, again, he who shall not be named was involved. No, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. But he actually did some good matches with Dino in DDT.
Right.
That was hilarious. Probably some matches that might not be very acceptable in America. Boom Boom versus Bang Bang or whatever. So you had the Kings of Wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm. That's Cesaro and Chris Hero.
Cesaro and Chris Hero. And
Yeah, look at me. I haven't even watched any of their stuff, and I know this stuff just from secondhand.
Hell yeah,
information.
Good job, man. You got it going down. And
I'd love to see that team come back, man.
I don't know about Chris Hero anymore, dude. He's kind of fallen off, but great wrestling mind.
That's what I'm saying. I hope he's involved somewhere. He needs to be behind the scenes somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Let me close that window here. I will say you're starting to get, now in the 2000s, you're starting to get into these wild indie tag teams that have crazy moves and stuff. Not quite at the level of Dragon Gate, PWG Young Bucks stuff for the most part, but I will say the giant swing into the drop kick, just in theory, is such a violent move. You know what I mean? Like,
hey,
it's
man,
like straight from a video game.
In person, Chris Hero's still the most violent striker I've ever seen.
Really?
Oh my god, that elbow, forget it. Like,
you're gonna have to watch Walter.
Well, no, Walter's incredible too. But
Gunther.
I'd never seen him in person. Well, it's Walter.
Yeah.
But Chris Hero, man, I like I said, that was one of the first indie guys when I was in my little Renaissance 2014-15 where I'm like, oh, this is an indie guy that I could attach I really loved Chris Hero, man.
Awesome. Do you know who the Age of the Fall is, this tag team?
No.
It was Tyler Black and Jimmy Jacobs.
Okay.
So,
that's Seth Rollins, as we know him today.
Seth Rollins and
Jimmy Jacobs, who was a WWE writer until a few years ago, and he goes as like this zombie princess kind of deal on the indies.
He had a 12-year career in Ring of Honor, man, and he was 5-time tag team champion.
And he was a writer or some type of producer for WWE for a pretty long time too. And I think it ended when when the Young Bucks kind of did their little raid and he got involved somehow. He got fired because of that.
Yeah, he posted a photo on Instagram with the Bullet Club.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, during their invasion of Raw. Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Whoops-a-daisy.
Whoopsie.
I don't think he tried not to get fired, I think he was looking to,
Well, now he's doing GCW stuff and Cage of Death, Global War Chicago. So
yeah, definitely a fixture behind the scenes. He'll always have some work.
So there you go. There's another cool tag team. And then one of the most popular and unlikely teams of this era is Kevin Steen and El Generico. Who a lot of people probably didn't realize they were both basically raised in the same area.
Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Yeah. In the Montreal area, yeah.
Montreal area. Yeah, what is actually Kevin Steen? What is it, like No, that's thinking of John Cena. I forgot what the actual city was. I was thinking Newbury, but that's Cena.
No. Somewhere. I'll look it up. It's like it's at the tip of my tongue.
We've heard the announcers say it like a million times.
They're both English as a second language. At least Kevin Steen.
Oh yeah, both of them. I seen them both do Maryville, right?
Maryville, yes. Yeah.
Maryville, Quebec, Canada, and
Yeah,
that
which
came off my memory. Thank you.
he lives in Montreal still, I think, Kevin Owens.
Yeah, I've heard
After
them both
he
do
got,
awesome Quebecese French promos.
after he got called up from NXT, he first thing he did was tell Triple H, "I want to move back to Canada," and he's like, "Yeah,
I
go ahead."
ain't living in Florida, brother.
Yeah, he's like,
Fuck
yeah,
that.
They went right back up to Montreal.
Montreal. In Japan, at this time period, you had Kenta and Marufuji, right? So
Fun.
incredible strikers, great tag team.
Kenta's another fantastic striker too.
Kenta, and with Marufuji, everyone sees this amazing hook kick from Ospreay, right? And
Yes.
he said, he's like, I just ripped it off from Marufuji. I stole it from Marufuji because Marufuji was so great at it. Marufuji, an awesome striker, incredible kicks, and Kenta with the incredible slaps and kicks as well.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, you had other promotions featuring awesome talent. That was good stuff. So you had Chikara, right, which kind of had the trios thing going. Mike Quackenbush headed that, and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, which, if you're interested in that, we did a whole episode on wrestling and PWG, right?
Absolutely, it's kind of the grandfather of independent wrestling, PWG, in its modern era of what it is today. I mean,
I feel like Dragon Gate was doing it before.
well, that's
honestly.
in Japan, but I'm talking about like things like GCW, and I'm sure we can name a lot of others, but things like GCW were kind of PWG clones in a way.
Yeah, except they're not as good as PWG. That's
No,
for sure.
but what I'm saying is PWG was, if you look at the main roster of WWE now, or NXT from 3 or 4 years ago, 90% of those wrestlers went through PWG.
Oh yeah, for sure. It is like one of those. It is like the golden indie where you got to get your foot through the door. And once again, like we've discussed this in full detail, and we talked about the tag team champions and the lineage of that as well. If you guys want to hear that, go back and listen to Wrestling and PWG. That was a pretty popular episode. So for some reason I'm reading here tag teams such as Batman and Robin. So that was weird. I don't know where that.
It might have been a one-time thing that was kind of a gimmick for a Halloween show or something.
I think so. So that's where his article ends. So I wrote a little more. I'm going to say that one more time because Jamie Greer, thank you for doing all that research. So after that, you had a lot of different stuff going on in the world, right? So you have the rise of this amazing team in DDT, the Golden Lovers, which hugely influential. And they made tag team wrestling in Japan a really huge deal. Their matches and then the rivalry afterwards was really a big fucking deal, and it's what got both guys these opportunities. It got both guys opportunities into New Japan. You had Ibushi getting an offer with WWE at one point. Putting them both on the map.
To kind of go on the side, I have a list of the PWG tag team champions, and it's pretty incredible, this list.
Yeah, name some of them.
So the first ones were in 2004 was B-Boy and Homicide.
Yep. And again, we did mention this on that show, but you can refresh the memory.
Yeah, we can skip over some, for various reasons. But you had stuff like Scorpio Sky and Quicksilver. You had El Generico and Human Tornado, Davey Richards and Super Dragon.
You had Ricochet.
Davey Richards and Roderick Strong.
You have Ricochet and Matt Sydal or something like that?
Mr. Wrestling, Kevin Steen and El Generico. You had the Young Bucks, of course. Age of the Fall, of course, was a tag team.
Age of the Fall, okay.
Yeah, they were up there too. And the current champions are Malachi Black and Brody King.
Yeah, the House of Black.
You had Brian Cage and Michael Elgin. You had, the Super Smash Brothers, as they were known, which is basically the Dark Order.
The Dark Order. Well, one of them's not in AEW anymore, but
right.
They started the Dark Order.
So, and then you had El Generico and Paul London as a tag team in 2010. Of course, it's the PWG website that I'm going off of, which is outdated from 7 or 8 years. And to be honest with you, I would volunteer to update their website if they just gave me. I'm looking at the banner, and I'm gonna let's see, Jeff Cobb, Keith Lee, Matt Jackson.
It's like all guys who are on
one of the
companies.
Seidel's, Chuck Taylor. What's his name? He used to Cameron Grimes. I can't. Is on there. A.K.A. Trevor Lee. Zack Sabre Jr., Super Dragon, Matt Jackson, El Bandito, Trent, and I think that's Ray Phoenix. But anyway, that's on their homepage.
But just to mention a few more, we had Ethan Page and Josh Alexander as PWG championships. We had Lucha Brothers, Cobb and Riddle, and then the Rascals, who went on to what are they called in NXT?
Didn't one of them get fired for doing the Hitler pose thing?
Something like that, yeah.
It's just a stupid picture that he took. I'm sure Wrestling and social media will be a fantastic episode too.
Yeah. So Scott Lost. Wow, Scott Lost. Where do I know him from? Okay, I'm getting mixed up with someone else. But Davey Richards and Super Dragons. Lots of talented people that have had that title, and I wouldn't be surprised if FDR has them soon, to be honest. Golden Lovers, the PWG era. In New Japan, you had the Bullet Club forming, and you had Gallows and Anderson, G.O.D. Do you remember the team that Suzuki had for a while?
Him and...
No, Killer Elite Squad.
Oh, Killer Elite Squad, yeah.
Who wrestled quite a bit in Noah also, but that was Lance Archer and Davey Boy Smith Jr. Yeah. And of course the Young Bucks joined in... They also joined the Bullet Club too. Started making a run in Japan. At this time you had Red Dragon in ROH, right?
Yeah.
You had the Kingdom, so we had people that were eventually going to become big stars. At least one of them. You had... Later on, obviously, there was FTR, known as the Revival.
Shield.
Had the Shield, yep. What were they called? DIY, right?
Yeah, I guess the Wyatts to a regard as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. But
they held the tag team champions.
The Briscoes in the past 10 years also. Briscoes, and I feel like they're just as good as they've ever been lately. Some crazy stuff.
Briscoes are great, for sure.
The Usos in WWE. Still great.
Are, they're on a great level. Street Profits. I mean, we can go on and on about
the
some
New
of the
Day.
tag teams. The New Day, I mean, it took us this long.
What do you think about Team Hell No?
I like the skits they would do.
I know, they were very... When he did the No chant.
Yeah, and then when they would go see the therapist, it was good stuff.
That was really, really good stuff. So that kind of moves us on to... We did a quick rundown of the history of tag team wrestling. It kind of moves us on to tag team wrestling, men's tag team wrestling today. We have more stuff to talk about after this. We're going to move on to women's stuff and multi-man tags after this, but let's talk about today, Justin. Let's throw out our ratings. F- to A+. I name the company, and we rate the current tag team division, okay?
Yeah.
So, WWE.
You have the Usos, you have the Street Profits. I don't even really think you have the New Day anymore.
The Viking Raiders?
The Viking Raiders. I mean...
Well, they still have Kofi and
Xavier.
Xavier, yeah. Although,
obviously,
I mean, it's not the same without Big E.
Big E's on the shelf for a little while longer, of course.
Potentially his whole life, man.
That's true. You have, maybe American Alpha with Otis and
Oh,
Chad Gable.
yeah. Oh, have you seen the
Um,
Creed brothers? They're great.
no, I have not.
Oh, they're great, dude. Julius and Brutus Creed in NXT, awesome
Okay.
tag team. Like I've seen them do moves that like you shouldn't. I saw one of them do a cannonball off the top post onto the floor, and like they were like supposedly like he's never gonna do that move again. They told him that.
Jesus.
Like I want you to think about that, a cannonball. So his whole body was tucked. You know what I'm saying? Like that can't be good for your knees and ankles, dude.
No. No. I mean, the
But
Usos and Street Profits are great tag teams, and they've been putting on some killer matches. Especially the Money in the Bank one was, you know, could be on
like
the
almost
list.
a little too much though. It's like a little too much between them. I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah,
But
I'm just. Well, I think obviously, we talk about superstars. I mean, I think Montez Ford. It's only a matter of time before they spin him off.
yeah, and we are talking about the like not the booking, basically, not the booking particularly, but the actual divisions. You have RK Bro, who was actually
Oh, right,
became
sure.
pretty cool. You know,
Right.
eventually.
It's a little silly, but well, silly can be good sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't. I just
I'm gonna give him a B. I think they have really good talent. I don't think it's the
Sure.
same as the others. I think the booking's not that great for the tag division.
Oh, the
and,
talent is there for sure. I mean, the Usos are as good as there is, and
Oh,
the
for
Street
sure.
Profits are great, and RK Bro, two talented dudes. I'm just talking about like the presentation of making Matt Riddle the dopey guy with the fucking scooter.
Oh, he's been getting a little more serious lately.
Yeah, he
though.
has, but
So,
yeah.
so what do you give him?
Well, I would just say that we only were able to name 4 or 5 teams, so
True.
I would say it's kind of quality over quantity with them right now. But
Yeah.
you're also talking to someone that doesn't really fully watch the product, so I give them a solid a B, just because the ones that they present are good ones.
New Japan Pro Wrestling always have struggled with their tag teams for the most part.
It's been a little bit better recently, but see, it's hard because there's not a lot of tag team competition taking place right now.
Yeah,
we're
but
not
we got
gonna
the
have
tag league. Tag league is coming up.
tag leagues coming up, so that's when we'll really find out what their tag teams are all about, because we're probably going to see some makeshift ones. We got Dangerous Techers. Are they still a tag team? And they have 2 great individuals, and they've had some great tag team runs. God, I know that Tongaloa is still injured, so I don't know if he would probably have been in the G1 if he was healthy.
You had Finley and Juice in the past,
And that's
who actually
no
became
longer
a
a
pretty
thing.
strong team.
Yeah, that Finn Juice was great, but they're no longer a thing anymore. Yeah, I would just kind of give them an incomplete right now, because I don't really know what their tag teams look like.
I would say like C, average.
Cobb and O'Connor, fantastic.
Cobb and O'Connor, good, yeah. And let's not forget that their champions are FTR, so that's a pretty big deal.
That's a pretty big deal, and I think World Tag League is going to shoot this up, but I just cannot give them a grade right now, because I don't know, since everything is so split up right now because it's the G1. We don't know what their tag team picture is going to look like until World Tag League.
The talk of the town, AEW. Many people saying that they revolutionized tag team wrestling on TV. They have, I guess this is kind of combined with ROH, right? Because it's the same people basically competing, in a way. And I mean, I just got to give them an A, because their best matches every year have almost always been tag team matches, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks cage match is one of the best matches I've ever seen, and was my vote for match of the year last year.
We both did. And then before that, there was Omega and Hangman versus the Young Bucks. Amazing match, right?
Yeah, I mean, their tag team division might be the best booked thing they do.
I mean, dude, I haven't seen people freak out as much as I have, but that match, the Young Bucks and Swerve in the Glory and Team Taz, Dude, that match was so good.
Very good.
I just like, I can't say enough about how great that match is. I mean, just Swerve and Keith Lee as a tag team is great. You've got a thick roster of tag teams from the top to the middle. You have the Acclaimed, right? You have below that, you have the Pillman Jr. kind of near the bottom level.
You had Hollywood Blondes or whatever.
Yeah, you had Jungle Boy, who was great in a tag team, and they were champions for a while. You have the Briscoes and ROH. Man, that
FTR.
Yeah, and then we haven't even gotten into trios yet, which they got a whole tournament coming up. So if you get the Young Bucks and Omega, my God, dude.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
You give them an A as well?
I give them an A, absolutely.
Maybe an A plus.
You got the Best Friends. You got.
You got
Roppongi 3K.
Yeah, Roppongi 3K. Yeah, you got all sorts of awesome stuff going on there. So
it's by far the deepest tag team division in all of wrestling. I can't think of anywhere else in the world that's any deeper. And you're probably going to have one or two of those teams in the World Tag League as well.
Oh, I hope so. That would be really cool, seeing the Best Friends come back to the World Tag League. Now, I'm going to rate this one, and I know that you're not able to, but I'm going to rate Dragon Gate.
Yeah, I got no idea, man.
I give Dragon Gate, I'm going to give them an A minus, because they get an A because they have pushed these young guys at such a great level. Their tag belts have always been meaningful, whether it be their trios or their, duos, tag teams, or straight up tag teams. Like, those matches are always pretty great. They recently had this one with Junkie. I was going to call him Junkie. Jackie Funky Kame and Lee. And, I mean, it was just Jason Lee. And it was just so good. They've got a lot of potential, a lot of young guys. And, I mean, like I said, they're one of those rare companies where, like, tag teams really matter to them. And sometimes you have your trios matches outdoing your top single matches. So really good stuff. And especially when you get into, like, unit versus unit matches that have, like, tons of rules and you lose and the unit disbands and stuff like that. That's when you start getting, and you see some of that in Stardom too, but that's when the drama is so heavy. And I'd like to see more stuff like that in AEW. You lose and the unit disbands, or you lose and you got to join these guys. I think that makes for a great story.
Adds a Stardom element to it.
Yeah, for sure. And they did something like that in NXT recently too, where, God, I don't know the names of the groups. I think the Legend of the Phantasm or something. El Legado Fantasma.
That takes a lot of commitment to the creative staff, or the creative is, you really got to separate them,
Say that again? You got to separate what?
Well,
what
you have to commit to that. You can't just have them separate and then in 2 weeks later have them back together.
Yeah.
So it takes a creative commitment to stick to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because sometimes that's tough when the guys don't hate or when the guys are supposed to kayfabe hate each other and stuff.
Or they're just such an established tag team, and then they're having to cut the line on them already, Like, Jurassic Express just breaks up out of nowhere,
Well, they're back together now, right?
Yeah, I know.
I actually do believe that Black Luchasaurus is like that. I think that, like, his black mask means he's still evil.
Yeah, I don't buy it either.
Yeah, like he's gonna turn on him in the match probably, and then Jungle Boy might lose. You could do 2 or 3 matches with that that program, but
we're back. You can have Jungle Boy turn heel.
No, you don't want Jungle Boy to turn heel. You need Liv Morgan to turn heel, not Jungle Boy.
He doesn't have the promo skills yet to be a heel.
He's getting there though, bro.
That was a good one, but he needs a little more of a run as a babyface first.
I think Jungle Boy is a lot like a WWE type guy where he needs someone to write his promo for him, I could be wrong. Please, Jungle Boy, if you're listening and I'm wrong, tell me. And if you improv your whole promo, I am so sorry.
It's just He just needs a little more practice. That's all. He's really young and he's gonna get it. I'm not like concerned about that, but he just hasn't been, on national TV speaking into a camera for a while.
He was like the silent protagonist for a while, actually.
Yeah. He hasn't talked a lot. He has been asked to talk a lot.
Which was kind of his deal. I almost thought the gimmick was that like he's like Tarzan and he can't even speak English, But
that was, I think, I think it was kind of implied for a while.
Yeah, clearly he's not yodeling through the jungle anymore. So let's do a little quick thing on women's tag team, which we didn't talk a ton about. Women tag team wrestling has its own history, and it's pretty fascinating. The WWE, in my opinion, this isn't my opinion. This is a fact for right now, but they only recently made the new tag team women's belts. And actually, there's two of them. There's NXT and WWE. And before this, though, you had your women's tag teams here and there, right? But this was this was before Give Divas a Chance type of thing. And this was like Lay Cool, right? Natalya and Beth Phoenix.
Yeah, right. I wasn't really following around that time.
Yeah, that's probably good reason.
Yeah, that was probably the strictly aesthetic era for WWE with women's wrestling, right?
Yeah, but before that, though, when you go back in the day, you had the Jumping Bomb Angels, right? This was in the late 80s, right? Or mid 80s?
Mid to late 80s, I think.
Talk about them a little bit.
They were a tag team that, would have these just like, they were I would almost say they were like a Young Bucks, but Japanese in a way, where you really couldn't tell them apart. Nick and Matt, I know they're like 5 years apart, which blows me away in terms of age, but they just looked like one person in terms of their, aesthetics and everything like that. So just kind of really ahead of their time in terms of not only their presentation, but their in-ring stuff. And they would just be on occasional shows in the 80s in WWE.
Well, they were very popular in Japan, and they were both the exact same height, by the way. So there you go with that. Both have that dark Japanese dark hair. Before it was in vogue to bleach. Now in Japan, like, everyone has like orange hair, and you know what I mean?
Right. Like the brownish orange.
Yeah, that brownish orange. But they were cool, and they were ahead of their time, like you said. They wrestled in WWF, and you had other amazing Japanese tag teams. And Japan, really ahead of its time with the tag team stuff. You had women tag teams that were huge, real huge, in fact. And I'll get to that. Some other tag teams that were good in the day. Again, 80s, 90s, you had Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada. You had Double Inoue. But the most decorated women's tag team, have you heard of the Crush Gals?
Is that Bull Nakano and somebody?
It's Chigusa Nagayo and Lioness Asuka. Lioness Asuka's great. They're both great. And I just don't know if you knew this, but these girls, they were doing like massive 12.0 TV ratings consistently. Wow. And I had read, doing my research, that their popularity was actually akin to like Hulk Hogan in USA.
Oh, really?
And the cool thing about the Crush Gals is, I guess back then, they had a huge female fan base, which you don't really see much in wrestling. But back then, the crowds would be all these young girls like looking up to the Crush Gals and screaming, and the crowds would be deafening because of the high-pitched screams from the girls.
It's like a rock and roll express.
Yeah, or when you get into Texas, right, and you have the Von Erichs. Yeah. So a lot of the Japanese teams, those women, competed for WWWA, which was kind of the big title back then. Since then, you've had a lot of more indie Japanese women's promotions. Obviously, we've done Wrestling and Stardom, and we talked about the whole belt lineage there with the tag team belts, and I can't even remember what they're called. If they're remember, the titles are weird. It's like something.
Artist, the speed, something.
There was the high speed, the artist,
High speed.
which I think was the trios belt. But you had Stardom and TJPW having their own tag team divisions with a lot of great stuff. And WWE over the past years, I feel like they've really struggled with their women's tag team division, right? You've even had a lot of issues. You remember them giving the belts to the Iconics, and then Bayley and Sasha backstage were supposedly crying. You remember that story?
Well, I know that Sasha and Bayley were really proud of being the first champions when they brought that title back.
Yeah.
So they were somewhat protective of that.
And they gave it to the Iconics at WrestleMania.
Yeah, who were a very entertaining duo, but maybe not what you would call in-ring, aficionados, I guess. But, I don't know.
Maybe not the biggest stars, even though I did find them entertaining as well.
Oh,
they're like
fantastic.
They're one of those groups where I'm
hilarious.
just like, how are they not still in WWE?
Yeah.
Very entertaining. But I mean, then since then we've had real questionable booking with women's tag team, leading to recently to Sasha and Naomi.
So they vacated and they're supposed to be back at some point, right?
I've heard it might be on Monday.
Are the titles vacated technically right now?
Yeah, and another interesting thing, they're having a tournament for the titles, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was not being planned when Vince was there, but Vince left, and now they're having a tournament for them.
Good. I mean, it obviously was something he was going to put on the back burner or eliminate, I bet.
Yeah. So, taking them more seriously, setting up angles there. So we'll see. We've got a WWE's in a state of flux right now, and we'll talk more about that. But, women's AEW tag team, women's division in AEW has always kind of lagged behind, but they have some really great women in there.
Have they announced titles?
They have not. And there is no tag team division for the women.
Yeah, I mean, that's, AEW's women's division has been one of the most inconsistently booked things they have going. It was a struggle the first couple years with their women's division. It's gotten better recently, but it's still not great.
It's still tough. Yeah. I mean, when you see... I remember I was watching TV and you seen Jade Cargill, right? And she had a championship, and I was like, okay, she looks like a badass. Then all of a sudden, Mercedes Martinez comes out with an even bigger belt. And I'm like, wait a second. This title doesn't seem that important. Mercedes Martinez has a way bigger title than her, and it's all gold.
What is her title?
The ROH women's title.
Oh, right. Well, then you have...
Very confusing.
Thunder Rosa's on a pretty good run, but then you do have a lot of... I think a tag title might help that division, because you have Ember Moon. Is she even doing anything right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who she's with.
Hikaru Shida is, and there's a lot of.
You can put Shida and Riho together. You've got quite a few women's stables. You got the baddies, or is that a WWE thing? Okay.
You have Reba and Jamie Hayter with. DMD.
Yep, Britt Baker.
There's a lot of women in their division with nothing to do that could probably benefit from being, because to me it's like, if you're going to have women's tag teams, you need a title.
Yeah,
otherwise, why are they out there,
Yeah, the argument is that they have too many matches already, or too many belts already. And sometimes, just like in New Japan, they do the preview tags, which... They've had some good ones. I believe recently on Dynamite, I heard that women's tag match was actually pretty great. I didn't see it, but I heard it was really good. You have, I'm trying to remember who it was. It was Thunder Rosa, and it's like, that's on the tip of my tongue, but she's from the Gold Coast, Australia, and I should know her name. Anyways, she's a very popular wrestler. This happens all the time on the show. We're talking about someone...
Tony Storm.
Tony Storm. We're talking about someone we've known for our whole life, for years and years, and we talk about all these different wrestlers, and it's like that one wrestler. It's like, what's the name of that guy? Oh, yeah, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I just
think that the women's division should have everything the men's divisions have. tag titles, a secondary singles title, and a championship. I mean, I think part of it too with WWE is their roster is thinner than it used to be. With all those cuts they've had over the last 5 or 6 years, there's way thinner of a women's division, way less tag teams, and you know what I mean? There's just less now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that sentiment of there must be equality on both sides. I don't
Well,
think
I'm just saying, like, those tag titles would benefit the women's division AEW.
Yeah, I don't think they would be a bad thing. I think that could work. And it gives you another championship match to put on your Battle of the Belts or your pay-per-view. But the question is, can they make that into a quality division that has good matches? And you know AEW is all about great matches. So
I think the talent's there, and you can definitely have them main event a Rampage or two a month.
Well, maybe if Tony's listening to this, he'll and they do start a division, then we will claim that it was our idea, right?
Absolutely.
Great. The last topic here, something we haven't talked about, but it's been on the front of our minds. Everyone's questioning, why didn't you talk about that? It's multi-man tags.
And we're not going to talk about it, so fuck you. I'm just kidding.
I'm not going to get into crazy gimmick matches. We don't need to talk about tornado matches and stuff like that. Although, you do have the Lucha Brothers versus Rush and Andrade in a tornado match, which sounds absolutely incredible, coming up pretty soon. So these multi-man tags, sometimes they're meant as like a house show preview match, right? Especially we see that in the G1.
Yeah, trios matches are traditionally filler, right? I mean, to get somebody on the card.
Yeah, to get somebody on the card, yeah, in general. And they do it all the time in WWE too. They'll have like, the champion and then his lackey and another guy versus, the challenger and his lackey and another guy.
And it's done for a mileage thing too. It's to give guys a Suedo night off and work a little bit less if they got two other guys on their side.
You have always said Suedo on the word pseudo. I've never I know that's a whole different subject. I say a lot of
words wrong. Don't even get me started.
Suedo. It's like you read it when you were a kid and just stuck with what it was in your head. But no,
I'm not an intelligent person. John.
It has nothing to do with intelligence, bro. It's just I say words funny as well. So Suedo, I just think it reminds me of like the leather, suede.
If you're just gonna make fun of me, I'm gonna leave. This is ridiculous. I'm sad.
And I hate how you. No, I'm just kidding. You have those preview type of multi-mans in the G1. But some multi-man matches have become pretty legendary in their own right. Dragon Gate, I talked about this before. They have the intense multi-man matches with the loser leaves town, loser disbands type of stuff. The Dragon Gate spot, and I know you've seen this spot in wrestling, is where they throw one guy in the corner and then like all 5 wrestlers run at a train and hit the dude. You know that spot?
Yeah.
This
definitely
is like
the PWG thing too.
Okay, yeah.
Anytime you can't see the ring because there's too many guys standing on the outside, it's a little bit of it's a little hard to take it seriously when they have those 5-on-5 matches and stuff.
I could kind of see that. It's almost a little easier on TV.
It looks like a lumberjack match, but everyone's standing on the up on the ring, Yeah.
I wrote here that PWG is known for its intense and heavy, action-heavy, ridiculous multi-man tags, often with a lot of comedy aspects thrown in there too.
They're fantastic. There was one match that Dave Meltzer loved. I can't remember if it was it might have been like a few years ago. It was the Young Bucks, Matt Sydal, and Ricochet, then another team, and two other guys.
The High Flyer Festival. And of course, they just did all the craziest possible spots in the world. Besides Dragon Gate, though, you have All Japan. And for me, All Japan has the best multi-man tags I've ever seen in my life. The first All Japan match I've ever seen was Misawa Kawada Kobashi versus Taue Tsuruta and Fuchi. one of the best matches I've ever seen. Those guys really, really, they took the multi-man tag thing real serious. I mean, these multi-man weren't previews. They were main events where they would go 40 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And like hot crowds, incredible, just they kept going. They would hit that next gear and then it's like, oh, they're still going. Oh, they're still kicking out. And then, in a lot of Mexican promotions, in Chikara, New Japan, Dragon Gate, and now in AEW, you've got trios titles, right?
Yeah, there's going to be a tournament for that coming up.
Problem is, in a lot of these companies, New Japan treats the trios titles kind of shitty.
They do.
I mean, Yoshihashi cried when he won it, didn't he?
Yoshihashi should be crying every time he wins, although he's been great in this tournament, but, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a useless title in New Japan, to be honest.
It doesn't have to be, but it is. They could definitely main event that thing at these Road 2 shows a little bit more, or put them at they just don't defend them enough.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of combinations of guys that can go after those things and make them legit, but they just don't, like, when Chaos had it during that time where they were carrying it for a while, they were rarely defending it. So, who is it? The House of Torture now?
That's the thing. Like, we don't even remember most of the time.
Yeah,
Probably House of Torture.
Yeah, they should be defending that. Or whoever has it now should be defending it on the G1 final night,
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how they've treated that. With AEW, what they've done with tag, I think they're going to take the trios thing pretty seriously, too. It's not going to be quite as at the level of the tag teams, but I think that it's going to be a pretty important match that'll result in some ridiculous, fun PWG style stuff.
Yeah, and I think it'll launch some singles angles for the next year or so too.
And if it's Kenny Omega's comeback too, that'll be a huge launching point for the division, right?
And that's a good way to ease him back in a 6-man tags, right?
Yeah, we're not really sure what's going on though, because obviously Hangman came out and saved the Young Bucks on their face turn this week.
Right.
So
yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
So and then you had like Chikara. They had trios tournaments going on. The King of the Trios for a while. They had like a Japanese team. They had all sorts of different people in there, and so we'll see how it goes for AEW with the trios thing. It's pretty exciting. Looking forward. Tag team wrestling at this point is very exciting. FTR is becoming the Ultimo Dragons of their day.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And there's a landscape now where they're able to jump from place to place and do this stuff. Pretty cool.
Real cool stuff. So that's what we got on tag team wrestling. The full history, some of the different facets of tag team wrestling. And, I think that's about it for tonight. Justin, do you have anything else to say? What's your Instagram, Justin?
I'm at In-Ring Art everywhere. Twitter, Instagram.
Even on TikTok?
And I'm on the TikTok now. And, it's weird. Like, the first video I posted, I got 18,000 views.
How many likes, though?
Let me check.
TikTok is pretty great at pushing videos to people, dude. It gives a lot of... And Instagram is trying to become TikTok now, which we'll talk about off the air, but they don't want... they're
94.
Okay, that's good, man.
94 likes, 18 comments. It was just my Eddie Guerrero from October 2020 against one I did recently. And I got a lot of comments, and that was like the first one I posted. And 18,500, but everything else hasn't come even close to that. But, there's no rhyme or formula to it. It's just, you do it for yourself and entertain yourself. And
if something good comes, then all the better.
Exactly. Just don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're on TikTok. At John Ensman is me. We are at Wrestling and Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us there. And we'd love to hear from you guys. Tell us what we got wrong. Tell us what we got right and what you liked.
Definitely.
And besides that, we are going to get out of here. So without further ado, Justin, thank you for doing the show with me, my friend.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys later.